Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed. I'm here with Tracy Cross, the writer, the author of the upcoming book, Root Work, which is a horror novel. She's out of Washington, D.C. She's a mom and a writer. Thank you so much for joining us. You are a folk horror writer. Is that correct?
Horror, just horror.
Just horror, just straight up horror. You're like,
it's all encompassing. Just if it scares you, it's all encompassing. Just the horror writer.
Fantastic. And you have a book coming out called Folk Work and Root Work. See, this is what happens to me. It's Root Work. I get so tongue-tied. And that's coming out in November 22.
Correct.
I'm pretty excited about that. Now, what was that the inspiration for that book? And what is it about?
Well, it's about three sisters that go on like a summer adventure and crazy things happen. Think practical magic with three sisters in the 1880s and a hoodoo practitioner who happens to be their aunt. So it's just their like summer of adventure. And what happens is things happen when they hang out with their aunt that opens bigger doors to other stories and other things that are happening like later on, like it's supposed to be a 3-book series. So in the second book, you have references back to the first, and in the third book, which I'm working on now, I'm still trying to get that together, but it has like some ways to loop back to the first and the second book. It's going to be pretty neat, I think.
And what inspired you?
Yeah, it was based on a story my grandma told me before she died. And it was because she died during the COVID whole thing, but it wasn't COVID. She was just old. She was like 93. It's just like, wow, you have lived a fruitful life. And she told us about when she was younger, living in a parish down in Louisiana, and the things that happened to them down there as a huge, because remember back then they had huge family, like has her family, her grandfather, something had happened to her grandfather. I don't want to tell you too much because it gives way to the crust of the story, but something really bad happened to her. But then, I have to say, I asked her, I said, so what else do you remember? And she goes, I was like a baby. Like this story was told to me, so I don't really remember. I'm like, oh, never mind.
That's amazing. And now, you said you're working on, it's like a series of books. So it's based on the same story, but it's a series, or is it just a completely different story?
So it's 3 books. The Conjure series is what it's called. And each book so there's a little book of spells that they get from the aunt, the sisters get. And each book has like some of the spells from the book. So the book that they get at the end of Root Work is like the device. And then all the stories come from little spells within the book.
Oh, that's awesome. I am excited for that. That is very different.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. Now, you're writing this book based on a story your grandmother told you. When is a first time in your life, or any time in your life, when you realized that language had power?
Well, I used to have a stutter. It's hard to believe, but I sounded like Sylvester the Cat with the thuffering thuckadash, and it was when I was put into a class, it was like speech therapy, but it was like in the late 70s. So I was in the class and we had to play telephone, the whisper game. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized, okay, I may have a stutter, but everybody's different. Like the kid next to me was deaf in one ear. And I remember I was supposed to whisper to him and I'm like, but he's deaf. He can't hear me. And then like the teacher, the boy was just like, I can't hear her. Like we have to put her on the other side. And I'm just like, we're kids. And I'm just like, okay, so like, I'm like, if I go to the other side, can you hear me? And he's just like, well, yeah, I can hear you out of this side. I just can't hear you. I don't know what you're saying over here. But that's when it started. And then you start like reading, books. And then it's when you start realizing that the world is bigger than where you are. That's when you start to learn that, oh, well, words and language, just not everyone in the world speaks English, like I can go here and everyone, like I'm like a kid, everybody speaks English, everybody speaks American, but then you like find out like, wait, what? Like I just learned that in parts of Central America, there are different types of sign language, which I didn't know. Like, yeah, there's like Honduran sign language and all this other stuff. And I was like, what? Interesting. So yeah, it's an evolving thing. I learn something new every day about language.
Now, what do you think the components are for good writing? Now, obviously writing is subjective, but what do you feel are the components of good writing?
So good writing to me, I'm like, I don't know if it's a stickler, but I like a book that jumps off with some action or just jumps off with like, they always say the first sentence of the book is what captures you the most. And I have started like 4 or 5 different books this week. And I'm just like, it's not catching me. It's not catching me. They say, write the story that you want to read. So I start a lot of my workout with action. Because I just want to jump right in. I just want to feel like I'm jumping in the middle of something. There's something that happened, but we're moving forward together. So I would say some of the components for me are the action, a plot, good character development. If I can't believe the characters, then I can't, be a part of it. Like there were some other books that I read where they had like Black characters and white characters, and they were all, together, but the voice all sounded the same. So it didn't matter who was speaking, they all sounded the same. And I'm like, I appreciate you adding a Black character, but she don't talk like this girl. And, the dude sounds like the chick and everybody sounds like the same. So it's just, put the work in, make it work.
So like a bit of a detail to the characters and making the characters individuals can help. Like, so that you can, if you can't see, you can physically describe a character and have them there, but it has to come through in their voice, basically, in their dialogue and in what they're saying, so that you can distinguish between characters. So, for me, I'm the same way. If I read the first paragraph and I'm not like, okay, I'm already disinterested. And it's not because it's not interesting, but it's not interesting necessarily to me.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I'm big on like things kind of moving in a rapid pace.
But the other thing about characters is that if it's not only just the voice, but if you can't see yourself in those characters like a little bit, then that definitely turns me off a little. I just read a novel about these kids, and they were like, it was an amusement park and they were trapped in the amusement park. And I mean, I'm a horror writer. So all of us, we all are a little bit sociopathic. So I'm like, okay, I can relate to this. I can relate to that. I can relate to this. So I just, even though it was almost, but not quite a hate read, but I just was like, I can relate to so many characters on so many levels that I just read right through it and I enjoyed it. But it's that relatability. If I can't see myself in a character, I'm out. That's it.
Now, does writing energize or exhaust you?
It's a little bit of both. Like I'm a nighttime writer. I enjoy writing like in the darkest dark of nights. But I also have a job and I have a child, and so many other things, and I'm in school. So sometimes when I think about it, it exhausts me because I'm just like, oh my God, I can't think of it's like I have to write this 3rd book and I can't get anything out. But then it's like, once I sit down, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop. I have like a life, but I can't stop writing. This is so great. So once I'm immersed in it, it does energize me to the point where I want to keep going. And it's also the company you keep. Like when you are talking to other horror writers or other, different genres or whatever, and that somebody says something, or like today I had a critique on a story that I wrote, and the guy had so many great ideas that I kind of wanted to reach over and just pause him. Like, pause. Now let me go and write this down, and finish this story, and then unpause. But I knew that, I couldn't do that. But I was just like, can you slow down? And he's like, well, I can send you the critique. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I got it. And then I got off the call and I'm just like, but I couldn't do too much. But yeah, I think it's the company you keep as well.
Do you work with other folks? Like, do you have a group of people or people that you know, bounce ideas off regularly? Is that something that helps you in your process?
If you're in the room, I will bounce an idea off of you. It's just like, what do you think? So do you think that like, but horror writers, like we have so many bizarre facts and notes and such that, you know, like I went to a conference and one of the girls was like, this is how fast the human body decomposes. And like, oh, cool, I have to remember that for the story, you know, that I'm working on. But I don't really bounce ideas off of a lot of people. I will bounce ideas off of, I have two sisters. I bounce ideas off of one of my sisters because she's a poet and she used to be into horror, but she's not as into it anymore. So I will call her up and maybe say, hey, what's going on? You know, I have this idea, this thought, just to see what kind of feedback she'll give me. But when it comes to like my own personal stories, I like to keep those kind of close to the bone because so many people are so like not nice out here that if you say, oh, well, I have this idea and I'm thinking of X, Y, and Z, the next thing you know, they're submitting a story somewhere and you're reading it going, whoa, that was my idea. Wanker, what are you doing? So I just keep it to myself. I'm a pretty quiet person, believe it or not.
No, I don't know. It's funny. I get what you're saying. When you say not nice people, in my case, sometimes I have people in my life that don't write.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the majority of the people in my life don't write. So when I want to talk about something exciting about writing, I get this because I could talk all day about it and I get the blank stare. That's nice, dear. You know, that kind of thing.
The glazed,
So,
like 100-yard stare, you know, that's like my mother. I'll be like, so I'm thinking about doing this. And she's just like, And I'm like, Mom, are you there? Yeah, I'm just like watching these plants grow. Just like, why did I even call you? Or she'll like, you know, there's a possum. I gotta go. Like, I'll call you back. I love you. And I'm just like, what? Even my dad, he's just like, he'll just straight up tell me, I just can't. I don't know. I'm not the one for this. Like,
yeah.
come on, help me out. Like, use your imagination. It's like, Tracy, when I was young, we wouldn't fly in jet cars. Okay, this is where my imagination is. Like, what the hell are you talking about? I can't talk to you,
Yeah.
girl. So,
It's funny, you know, and you wonder where you come from. Like my dad writes, so I kind of understand that is in my family and stuff. But you go, okay, wait, nobody in my family does this.
I
Like,
come from poets and accountants. So go put that together. You know, poets and accountants. My mom does accounting. My grandfather was the first Black accountant of a large major metropolitan city, you know, and then you just sit there and you're just like, where did I fit in this spectrum? You know, my sister does poetry, my brother-in-law does poetry, my niece writes some poetry, you know, everyone does poetry. And here comes the freak, you know, just like, I want all things dark and goth and scary. I'm going to write about everything that makes you uncomfortable. And it's like, Tracy, like, ew. Such, I do question myself quite a lot. Like, you know, even my younger sister, she's just like, I can't even think about horror. It scares me. And I'm like, you can't even think, I don't even want to think about it. Like, I try to think about happy things. And I'm okay, but you're a witch. Yeah, I know. And it's just like, okay, all right. It's just, yeah, it's we've got an interesting family here. Definitely.
what inspired you to write in the first place? What was your catalyst for writing?
One of the catalysts actually was a lack of representation. I didn't see myself in any of the stories. You know, everybody was reading Forever by Judy Blume. And I was just like, I can't relate to this white girl. What is happening? You know, and then like I would go to the library because my sister and my mother would have no problem. We were such nerds. We would just like spend our days at the library reading books. And I was like reading, I think I read a book called Perhaps I'll Dream of Darkness by Mary Sheldon, which was really great. But again, no representation. And you just kind of like, where are the books with the Black people? You know, and when I was coming up, there were none. There were just not any. So I said, okay. And yeah, that's why I started, because I want other kids that look like me or feel like me to be able to see me and say, okay, I can do it too. You know, if she's doing it, I can do it too. Because it was hard not having any, you know, you had Stephen King, who, oh, I can't even go on about this man, and not in a good way. But, you know, he was dropping the N-word in a lot of books. And then he had these tropes. And I'm like, dude, we are not all magic. Like, you know, the magical Negro trope, and they would come and save the day or something like this. And I'm just like, every book, what? Like, this isn't what I want to see. But then you read like Master of the Game with Sidney Sheldon, and it was Africans smuggling diamonds out by cutting their calves and sticking diamonds inside of them. Like, okay, that is not, I am a girl that lives in a city that takes ballet lessons. Where am I in this entire universe of writing and reading? So I said, I can do this. I can do it better. That's why I started writing when I was young. If you want examples, please contact my mother. She has all of my early and most embarrassing writings. And she just kind of goes like, I still got
it. Is there something, okay, so you have early writings. What did you start writing about? Like, give me an example of one of the young things that you, when you were young, that you were writing about.
So embarrassing. I wrote this book called The Secret Affair. It was like Dynasty, okay? It was just horrible. Oh my God, nobody's ever asked me about that. But it was like, so when I was taking ballet, we'd have like 2 or 3 classes in a row. So the girls would see me writing. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, writing a story. And it was like, The Secret Affair. Like, we had a song, we made a song for it. And it was so embarrassing. Oh my God. I wish I could find like the girls I took ballet with, because they'll tell you like, yeah, we were waiting. Like, I would be writing and they would be reading. Like, it would be like one chapter, and then it would be like there's another scene, and then there'd be a new chapter, and everybody was having sex with each other, but I didn't know a whole lot about sex. So I would just say, like, you know, so-and-so went to the bedroom with so-and-so and closed the door, you know, and then they come out and they're just like, oh my God, we just had sex, you know, and then it would be like,
and they say it out loud.
yeah, it's just like, they would just totally say it. It'd be like, you know, Tad had sex with Ruby, but he's married to so-and-so. And, you know, Dynasty, like I said, was so big back then that you couldn't help, but there were like fights in the book, you know. It was just like, I did that, and I drew a comic book, and it was like a comic strip, and it was based on fame, but I was such an idiot. I wrote like, this is like fame, but it is called Rain, and this is like, her name is like Coco, but not really Coco, it's Momo. You know, it was just like horrible. Like, these are the kids that go to the Cleveland School of Arts as opposed to like the New York School of Arts. It was just, I don't know. I think I was on crack or something when I was young. I was like, what the hell am I writing? Because when I think back about it now, I'm so like embarrassed. Like, this would never, ever, The Secret Affair would never get over on anyone. People be like, oh, you're a horror writer and you started out writing like rip-off comics and like love stories, and you didn't even know what sex was? It's just like, yeah, I totally did. Yeah. Oh, my mom.
Thank you so much.
Copy.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That's awesome. Now, did you have any literary heroes growing up that you really loved?
I used to watch The Twilight Zone. So my dad was really into like The Outer Limits, and I'm trying to think, like really scary movies in the 60s, late 60s, you know, like The Tingler and Mr. Sardonicus and things like this. So we would watch these movies with him. And the way my mind works is, okay, what else is on TV that is like this movie? So then he was like, well, you know, let's watch The Twilight Zone. And I think there was another show in the 60s, but I can't think of it, but it was like The Twilight Zone, but it wasn't as popular, and it's not The Outer Limits. It was a different show. So
was it Night
Gallery? That was in the 70s. That was after The Twilight Zone, which was even freakier. But I can't remember what the other show was. Maybe it was The Outer Limits, because it says we have control of your television now. And they would have the little thing that bounces around. But I watched The Twilight Zone, and I was like, oh, but then I noticed that there were specific stories that I liked. So I was like, okay, well, I like this one. And then I would see like screenplay by, written by. And so I was like, oh, let me look up these people that are writing. So the most common ones I liked were Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont, and the Rod Serling ones, of course. So I went downtown. My cousin worked in the library, and I was like, hey, do you have any books by this guy, Richard Matheson? And he goes out in the back, and he comes back, and he's like, I got this book, I Am Legend. You want to read it? And I was like, okay. So he goes, you have to read it like in this doorway, because it's like a first edition, and it's not even supposed to leave this room, you know, and promise me. I'm like, I promise. Just give me the damn book, you know. And he's just like, okay. So I consumed it. I don't even think I read it. I like just ate it. And I was like, I need more. So I just read all the Matheson that I could get my hands on. And then it segued into Charles Beaumont. So those are the two people that I had looked to the most for inspiration. And I just love the way that they write. And then I discovered Rod Serling had a Twilight Zone school for writing. And I was like, what? I was born too late, you know, but I was trying to figure out how that would work, what they would do. So then I would write in that manner. So now when people read my work, they're like, I'm always waiting for the twist, you know. Like, yeah, some days there's not going to be a twist. The story is the twist. How about that? But
so you mentioned Mr. Sardonicus, which is making me lose my mind. My kids as little ones, we had all these old tapes with all like Mr. Sardonicus, 13 Ghosts, all this stuff, and we would force our children to watch.
Like, so you see, whenever I say Mr. Sardonicus, people are just like, oh, and I'm like, no, you have to get it. You have to see it. It's one of the best movies. If I had a class that could teach you about the proper way to build suspense, that movie would be it. When he find out that they have the winning lottery ticket and it's buried in his dad's pocket in the grave, and the wife's like, well, you better go get it. And I'm just like, no, she did. You know, and he goes and he like opens the coffin, and there's like the dad's skull, like, and he's like, oh my God. But then you go, it's not, you know, it was like the director was like, that's not enough. We got to kill some people with this. We got to keep going. So then like they head home, and he's like walking in the room, and he's shuffling, and he's, oh. And the wife's like, did you get the ticket? And he's like, you know, and you're like, what? Why won't anybody turn the light on? What the hell is happening? And then the wife's like, well, I know you know, she's like yelling at him or whatever. And he's like, ugh, and he won't speak. And it's just like, what the hell is happening? So he's gonna do something. And I remember we were watching it in the summertime on this shag carpet at my house with my parents. And me and my sister were just like freaking out. We were just like, what is happening? Why won't they turn on the light? You know? And then the wife's just like, oh, you're just so stupid. I know I should have done it myself. And then she clicks on the light, and there he is with the grin and everything. You're just like, ah! Like, you're just like so scared. But whenever I think back to it, I'm like, that is the perfect way. We don't have many things like that build a suspense like that. You know, we don't have any, like, movies today are all about jump scares, but I like a good old fashioned, unwinding, slow scare that just builds up. And then when you see it, you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. And you're like, I still have like 3/4 of the movie to go. What the hell? You know, but
yeah, I love that you mentioned that movie. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm going to show this to my kids, and they're going to be, someone else knows Mr. Sardonicus, because it's great, but obscure. And The Tingler and stuff along those lines. I read some John Waters books, and he talks a lot about that Ed Wood kind of,
where they have the Tingler in the seats.
I mean, it's
tingle underneath you. Girl, I would not be able. I would have had a stroke. Okay, I would have been like peeing all over my chair. It was just like, something under my ass, just like, it would not have been like pretty at all. It just, that's not a date movie.
No.
I want to take you home and give
you
a night kiss, and you just like, I'll just stay at the theater. Do you have a jacket, perhaps?
They do that now, though, all the time. Like if you go to Disney, we went to Disney. We're sitting in this theater, and we're gonna get this experience, and they're poking you in the butt, swear to God, it's an alien encounter. It's called, and you sit in these chairs, and the alien's in the middle, and it's spraying crap at you, and the backs are poking you, and it's awful. But it's the same thing as what he was doing way back then. And they're just charging you a fortune.
They have that here in DC where you got into like this it looks like a booth almost. And then it would like move, then they had like several chairs of this in like a movie theater. So they were like, you will get rained on, the chairs will move. Now see, I am a person that likes to immerse themselves into something. So when I'm reading, I'm in it. I am totally in that environment. I am in that book. I am in that movie. So if you like, I thought I could speak French when I was watching La Femme Nikita because they said, okay, in the middle of the movie. And I'm like, I finally got it. But for them to start, like, they're like, you're going to get wet and water starts coming down and your chair starts shaking. My simple brain would be like, you are actually here. You must kill to get out, and it would not be pretty. It would not. This is why people are like, well, don't you go see those things? I know my limits. I can't play video games. I can't do any of these other things. I know my limits. I just can't do. I can't because I get so wrapped up in it. I'll just be like, she went out on the street, and da 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 da. She's trying to like wreck a car, like, I'm like, because I was in the world, Your Honor. I was just trapped. I didn't know, sir. I'm weak. My mind is weak.
Now, tell us what you're working on. Tell us where we can find you, your socials. This is awesome. You're so much fun to talk to.
I have been told that. Let me see here. So I am on Twitter at Tracy C. Writes on Twitter. TRACYC. So, and I am online at Tracy Cross online. So it's TRACY cross like Blue Cross, CROSS online. And I am on Instagram at Tracy Cross Writes, again, TRACY CROSS Writes. What I am working on now is getting ready for root work to come out, doing a whole bunch of interviews and whatnot, developmental editing the second book, which may or may not be called The Haunted. Still working on the title. Lots of books are called The Haunted, but you guys got a nice little heads up on that. I am also trying to figure out, doing a lot of research for that third book because it's going to be not a staggered timeline, but it's the one that I hate the most, where it takes place now and then. Mm-hmm. But both of the stories are super relevant. Mm. So I have to do some research on 1920s homesteading out west, and then I have to try to remember 2000 something living in Ohio here, So it's going to be, I'm telling you, it's going to be great. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, and then I'm just finishing up my bachelor's degree in creative writing. I have one class left and I will be done. And just all the things. My daughter is almost done with school. So we're doing a summer planning thing. My library that I work at was flooded. So I'm at a different location. And now they're yeah, you're not going to be going back to that branch for a while. I'm just that sucks.
Yeah.
So, it's parking out in summertime at a different location. My life is just in flux. But yeah, the book 2, I'm really digging deep into it to add a little bit more. I have been, you can look on my webpage. I've been on Black Women Are Scary, Nightlight, Tales to Terrify. And I know that Black Women Are Scary had another story called One Drop that I wrote which is inclusive in the hoodoo genre world that I made. Okay. They do reference the book in that story. So they're like, oh, where did you get this spell from? It's like, oh, this book that my cousins had, you know. So the book is kind of one thing that connects everything. And then I did some work with Rabia Chaudhry for Nighty Night, her Nighty Night podcast.
I saw that. I am going to be going and looking for that podcast.
They haven't had my stuff up yet. I don't know if they're waiting for it, but I did a really great, super awesome story called Sinner Man Hand. And it's based on the monkey's paw, except it has like 3 sisters and some hoodoo and some root work. And it's just, both of my sisters actually read it and they were just like, well, the one sister goes, why did you have me do that? That's so embarrassing. But then the other sister was like, all right, yeah, I'm good. I'm the redemptive sister. Yay, you know, you made me a witch in a book. And I'm like, yeah. But I really have been itching to get that out, you know, and I know that she's going in a different direction, but you know, hey, if we all reach out and ask them like, hey, where's the Sinner Man Hand story? Who knows? It could come up. Maybe it'll come up in Halloween. I don't know. But it's really scary. It's a really good story.
That's awesome. I appreciate you being with us here today. This has been really fun. And we'll be posting this on our Word Wednesday. I will give you a quick email and let you know when it's coming up, and you can promote yourself like a week ahead of time. And it'll be fun. And this has been great. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. In spite of my technical difficulties in the beginning.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here. I'm here for you all. I'm here for everyone. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And thank you for
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.